And welcome back, everybody. The Music Fan is here, back with my brother for the fourth part of Digging Through Discography with Haken. Last time we talked about the 2013 masterpiece, which is The Mountain. One thing I didn't get to say is he introduced me too late. If I had known about this album, I probably would have put it in my top 10, if not maybe number one album of 2013.
There's a lot of good albums that came out in 2013.
But still, like, just from what I listened to, like, I love Random Access Memories, I loved the 2020 Experience, but I think this album by far tops it.
In terms of metal albums, it might be top 5. There are a couple from that year that are almost considered 100%ers in terms of being perfect. So
I'll have to check them out then.
I will give you a list. Do not worry. I'm your metal guide.
Yeah.
As you can see, I'm wearing my Knee Oblivious Scar shirt. Awesome band. Check them out.
No.
Great live.
There's a couple
Full
things.
plug.
There's a couple of things that changed between The Mountain and Affinity. The first thing is the bassist Thomas McLean left the band and was replaced by Connor Green through auditions. We can definitely talk about how that changes the aspect of the next album. But the other thing is that in 2014 they dropped a EP of basically their songs that they had on Enter the Fifth Dimension. They reworked them and put them onto a 3-song EP called Restoration. Mm-hmm. We're not really going to talk about that. If you have any quick thoughts about it.
No, I don't really tend to put too much stock in EPs.
Exactly, me neither. That's why I'm not going to spend a full time. But if you guys ask for it, I'll definitely take a look into it and tell you all about it.
It'll be a short review, though.
Yeah. No, there's not really... They're good songs. It's just not worth the time to do a full review on. The more important thing is 2016, they dropped this next album, Affinity. It had a couple of singles, which was The Endless Knot and also Initiate. And this album itself talks a little bit more about the evolution between man and machine, specifically technology right now. And it's cool because it uses a little bit more of this 1980s style to talk about the future. So we've talked about The Mountain. Now we're going to talk about Affinity and see if we can agree or disagree on which one's better, because that's basically what it comes down to for now. So, like, when you first heard it, your first thoughts about that?
Well, the first song I heard off of it was Initiate. And the first thing that stood out to me was how much it sounded like Leprous. It screamed Leprous to me in terms of the really weird time signatures, the really electronic kind of crunchy riffs that they were using. And Ross's vocals took a step forward on this song from The Mountain. There was definitely more power to it. He still has that really high range, but there was definitely some more bite to his vocals. And on the album overall, very, very strong album. It's a very single-heavy album where you can just pick and choose songs from the album and not have to sit through it to get to a certain song. You can just pull it up like, okay, I want to listen to The Endless Knot, or I want to listen to Initiate, or I want to listen to 1985. Mm-hmm. In terms of being a complete package, let's see where that ranks in terms of Against the Mountain.
Well, we got a lot to talk about first. I agree on the vocal prowess of Ross Jennings on this one. I think this is by far the best melody work that they've ever had. Songs like Initiate, where you have this very interesting pre-chorus idea where he has this doo-doo, where he's using these half-step approaches, and it's like really, really cool how he's tying everything together. 1985, an amazing, amazing melody. And then you go into Lapse with some, which is another credible one with some really, really cool chords and a very powerful chorus. The Architect, not my favorite song, but Spare Me Your Apathy, like, that is a really cool chorus line. Earthrise, it feels a little bit poppy.
I love Earthrise, man. I just... Oh, way it's almost like a staccato with his voice. It's kind of like, take 2 steps forward, and it's like,
yeah,
love it.
And
I'm not the singer in the family here, right. So I usually leave that to him.
But like the other cool thing about that is like how they changed up the beat, where at first he was on the beat like 1 step back, 2 leaps forward, and then he goes, how can history remind us? Like it's a very subtle thing, but how they change it up. Red Giant, just like the tensions and the melody of that, it's legato, it's long, it's very small phrases, but just how everything works with each other is so cool. Oh God, like what is it? The Endless Knot. Like just that melody just keeps going forward and just keeps hitting with more and more to it. And finally, Bound by Gravity, an incredible song too.
Like, very good closing track.
All of those melodies are fantastic, and even also like guitar solos, some of the best that I've honestly ever heard. Like okay, Laps.
So you're going to talk to someone who is an aficionado of metal who listens to a lot of metal. You gotta listen. I listen to tech death. I listen to progressive death. I listen to bands like Opeth and bands like Arcspire and stuff like that. Like Revocation. Like when you're talking about solos,
that's fair.
They're good. Okay. They're good.
But you want
to talk about like a technical prowess?
Let's rephrase this. Is it the best Haken solos?
Oh yes, they're the best Haken solos. It's definitely the most complete in terms of technical skill and time signatures and distortion on the guitar and phrasing and stuff like that. Yeah, it's definitely the best Haken solos. I'll give you that.
What I think makes there's a lot of good technical solos, but what I think makes a very interesting solo is also being able to like actually sing the melody.
You want it to be more melodic.
Yeah, at points. Okay. And I mean, there's still technicality to it. Like if you go into the Endless Knot, the part at the end where he's doing like the flourishes, like those are very technical because he's hitting every part of that chord.
Yeah, he's going up the neck.
But it's just really cool the way that he does that. And then the Laps one, especially when you compare it to the keyboard solo at the beginning of the first part of it, it's just like it's killer. All of that is really killer. There's just so many things that stand out to me in terms of the arrangement part of it. And maybe the Mountain's a little bit more diverse in its sound, but I think there's a lot of really good arrangements on this album.
I agree. I keep going back to my point. This is an album where you can easily pick and choose which song you want to listen to at any time. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't... There's no one really overarching theme to the album. I mean, you can say it's kind of retro-themed, if that's the thing, but there's no real story being told throughout it. Unlike Mountain, where it's something you're going to want to sit down and listen to from start to finish without any interruptions.
Yep, that is one knock on it, if you will, is it doesn't really have a clear, concise narrative. It's talking more about just everything that's going on with Man and Machine and the good sides of it, but also the perilous sides. Like the Endless Knot is talking more about the perilous sides of what technology is doing to us. But unfortunately, I don't think you necessarily go to this album for the lyrics. No. I think you go for the music. And I think there's even some cool things that I personally have never heard on progressive album. You can like say if you've heard it before, but I think of the Endless Knot. I never really heard of a dubstep influenced progressive song.
It's all. So as far as it being dubstep, it's not dubstep. It's the guitar tone he's choosing and the reverb and the distortion he's using on the guitar to get that tone, to replicate it. The only other band I've really heard it on before is Leprous, and they've done some songs where they have that kind of tone to it. Okay. It's not something that's used very often in terms of prog metal from what I've been listening to lately, so that is a definite unique soul that they went for. Mm-hmm.
And even they use it on the Mountain, but they use a better sense of that glitch hop to it on Red Giant, where they're using these little glitches in the middle of not just the music, but also in Jennings' vocals. Mm-hmm. I think it does much better on there. And I can also say that I think the drums stand out more on this album, where with The Endless Knot, with 1985, with Initiate. All these ones stand out a little bit better when it comes to drumming. Not saying that the Mountain isn't great with it, but I think on the whole, I think everyone gets a chance to shine a little bit better, even on The Architect with the bass solo. Mm-hmm. That, though, I will say, if I have one nitpick, and he's going to disagree with me, The Architect isn't my favorite song. I usually do skip over it, only because when it comes to the longer songs, I think the middle part is cool when they're doing the more arpeggiated and slower ideas. I think that's a really cool part. I think the melody is interesting enough. I think the beginning of it and I think the ending of it kind of don't work as well. And for a 14-minute song, it doesn't do as much as, say, Falling Back to Earth does, as Paradalia, or even if we go back to like anything off of Visions or Aquarius. I think, to me, it's one of their weaker, longer songs.
and I'm gonna completely disagree. I think it's their best song they've ever written. I do love the dynamic shifts throughout this song, and one part in particular really like cemented it for me is when they bring in the lead singer of Leprous to do his really harsh guttural screams in the middle of that song. Just gives it another dimension that is missing from a lot of Haken long songs. There's not really any real harsh vocals ever in any of their albums, and I think it adds a really nice touch to the song.
Because they realize that Ross Jennings isn't the great when it comes to harsh vocals.
Definitely not.
Aquarius, it was borderline cheesy on Aquarius, and it's good that they at least brought someone else in. It's not a bad song. I don't think there, on The Mountain and on Affinity, I don't think there's any bad songs at all. I just think it's, if I was going to listen to the album, I usually skip The Architect. I usually skip it because I don't think there's enough there that keeps me there for the 14 minutes.
Here's the issue. On an album that is 60 minutes long, you are skipping a quarter of it.
Yes, but
I'm skipping a quarter of an entire album.
But
and the highlight and the main focus of that album, in terms of a track, is The Architect. That is the main meat of the album.
I understand.
And when you skip a song like that, that's an indictment on the album itself.
And I understand that. So I guess the argument that I've been doing in my head is the other 7 songs, because Affinity.exe
is just an
intro. It does bring into Initiate, but I guess my question is, the other 7 songs, are they solid enough that it is a better experience than The Mountain? And I think I say, well, one thing first, because I talked about my negatives, if you will, if you had to.
Any negatives? For a progressive metal album, most bands tell a narrative throughout their album. And that's what keeps you engaged and want to keep listening to the album through and through, time and time again. This album doesn't have that narrative, and I feel like some of the songs are a little disjointed in terms of placement in the album, and they just don't flow really well together. Unlike with The Mountain, where you can go literally the entire album and not skip a single song because it flows so well and it's so cohesive. And I'm not the biggest fan of the Endless Knot solo, of that dubstep solo. It feels like they're trying to capitalize on the dubstep movement and add that into music to be a little more appealing for the mainstream. It's definitely the most mainstream song on Endless Knot, that by far.
Is it?
For me, I feel like it is in terms of their singles.
In terms of their singles, yes. Because I would also say Earthrise is pretty poppy. I would say Bound by Gravity is also poppy.
But they didn't get the same kind of airplay that the Endless Knot did.
That's fair.
So I think just those 2 nitpicks are the reason why, and I'm going to say this now.
Well, let's hold off just 1 second.
Right.
Because I do have a couple of quick things that I just thought of. I agree with the narrative idea. I think that I kind of keep my own narrative to it. So it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, but I think what I love about it is that it approaches all these different genres and is able to branch out a little bit more than say, other albums are. This is probably the most accessible Haken album to date, where it can take influences of Dream Theater, a la 1985. That intro is classic Dream Theater. Even up to the it's the homages that it creates, but also the fact that it can do a little bit more.
Well, I think that's how they wrote this album. Was kind of like, we know we can't really top The Mountain in terms of songwriting and atmosphere and stuff, so let's write an album that pays homage to the bands before us,
right?
Who came before us, because we're considered the torchbearers going forward. Let's pay respect to the people who came before us. And that's what I think this album does a really good job of doing.
Right. And I can see that. I can see where the older influences are on songs like Earthrise in 1985. But I also see where they're trying to push it a little bit forward on songs like Red Giant, on The Endless Knot. And even still, the ability to actually make it a little bit more accessible on songs like Bound by Gravity and Lapse. I think all of those songs, it melts for this very interesting combination of technical prowess, but also accessibility to people who've never been able to get onto this. And just because an album is accessible does not mean it's good, but I think it's a cool idea to be able to find a way of latching onto somebody and being like, hey, listen to this song, and if you like this, listen to the rest of our stuff, because you might be able to get into us, actually. So I think that's really cool. it's tough. There's a lot of really cool things, but is it better than The Mountain? And I think it's time for a verdict.
Okay. In terms of, so I'm gonna put an asterisk on this answer. If you're looking for an album or a progressive album from Haken where you have the ability to pick and choose the songs you want to listen to, and don't necessarily have an hour and a half to devote to an album, Affinity's your way to go. Because, like I said, it's their most single radio-friendly album in terms of Initiate. He says Bound by Gravity, Earthrise, The Endless Knot. Like, you can pick and choose these songs, add them to a playlist, and they're bite-sized of 4 to 5 minutes. You can literally listen to 4 songs in 20 minutes. Like, all right, I'm good, I got my fix. But if you want a complete package, a complete experience based on atmosphere, based on narrative, based on vocal prowess, based on basically everything, musicianship, The Mountain's better. And, like I'm going to say to you, if you're going to cut out The Architect, which is 15 minutes, you're cutting out a quarter of an album.
I know.
And how can you rate it better than album if you're going to skip 15 minutes of a 60-minute album?
Because I think... So, if gun to your head, you would say that The Mountain is better than Affinity.
It's a better overall album, yes.
Okay.
It flows better.
Because what I'm trying to see in my mind is, are the other 7 songs better? And I think a majority of them are better than songs on The Mountain. I think if I was to rank the weakest of all the songs between the two, I would say Because It's There is weak on The Mountain. I think Periodala is not necessarily weak, but I think it overstays its welcome. But for me, The Architect is another one that overstays its welcome. So we cancel that out. Is everything else better than Because It's There? I think so. Because I agree with him. I keep coming back to Affinity. If I was to choose between the two, I always come back to Affinity. And I think why? It's because The Mountain's beautiful. The Mountain is amazing. But I don't think it does anything different in the scene. I think it does a lot of really stuff great. I think it does a lot of stuff really great. But can you tell me that anything from The Mountain that you have you heard something from The Mountain that you've never heard before on a progressive album?
Not necessarily. All progressive metal really kind of is the same, to be completely honest. Doesn't matter if you're listening to Haken, you're listening to Caligula's Horse, you're listening to Dream Theater. They follow the same formulas, per se.
And I think because of that, I think The Mountain is an extremely polished and everything to the perfect level of a progressive album. But I've heard things on Affinity that I've never heard before on any other progressive album. And I like that they're trying to branch all these ideas and trying to hit as many different audiences as possible. And it's cool to see that they're like, okay, we're bridging out, we're homaging, but we're also bridging out. So gun to my head, and honestly, it's basically 1A, 1B. Like,
you can't go wrong picking either one.
You can't pick either wrong, but so far, here are the rankings. Number 4, Aquarius. Number 3, Visions. Number 2, The Mountain. Number 1, Affinity. And this is the hardest one that I've had to do in ever. And it probably will be the hardest one that I'll ever have to do when it comes to these series. Both of them, you can't go wrong. But I would say, if you are new to the progressive scene, this is the one that you want to get onto first. And then try The Mountain and see how you feel about them. Because both of them are incredible.
Yeah, like I said, it depends on, honestly, it depends on how much time you have on the day. It depends. If you have an hour, listen to The Mountain. If you have 10 minutes, pick a couple tracks off of Affinity. That's literally how I base my opinion.
Right. They're by far the 2 best albums that they've done. But we'll see, because coming in a couple of weeks, we got Vector. What are your first thoughts about it?
The 2 tracks that I've heard so far, I'm not super impressed with. I feel like they're trying something new, and I don't know so far if I like it.
I am worried a little bit. I think it still will be a good album.
Oh, I think it'll be good, but I don't think it'll touch The Mountain or Affinity based on 2 singles we've heard so far.
I think the story is going to be interesting. I like the idea of the story.
Yes.
You've read about it?
I have, yes.
We'll talk about it when it comes out, when we review it. But I do like The Good Doctor. I think it could have been a little bit longer and a little bit better. I don't really like Puzzle Box. I think it kind of strays into some of the stuff that they've already done and done better.
Yeah.
I'm also worried about the fact that it's a 7-track CD and that one of them is an instrumental, not a problem.
I'm sure they're going to kill it.
But they haven't had an actual really instrumental since Visions, where they did 3 of them, and a lot of them kind of sounded the same when it comes to that. So that is a worry, and it's going to be 45 minutes, where every other album has been about an hour. So it's going to be interesting to see, and when it comes out, we'll definitely talk about it, because we got to end this series. But until then, if you like this album, and I hope you do, it's an incredible album. Let me know what you think about it. Share this with your friends, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and if you want to see us do more, we don't always have the most amount of time, but he's definitely getting me onto more metal, and I have a lot of other albums that I would love to talk about.
Like I said, next will be Knee of Little Scars.
Yeah.
It coming. Don't worry, guys.
Yep, it will happen. We're actually going to see Haken and Leprous in November, which I'm super excited for. It's going to
be awesome.
Next will be the 5th album when it comes out, but there'll be other videos I'll be posting this week, other album reviews. And, until then, just keep on watching. And this has been The Music Fan, and this has been my brother, and we're signing off.